Thank you, Mr. Speaker. With permission, I'd like to update the House on the 3 recent trade deals we've struck in the national interest. But first, Mr. Speaker, I'd like to say something about the horrific situation in Gaza, where the level of suffering, innocent children being bombed again, is utterly intolerable. Mr. Speaker, over the weekend we coordinated a response with our allies, as set out in my statement with President Macron and Prime Minister Carney last night. And I want to put on record today that we're horrified by the escalation from Israel. We repeat our demand for a ceasefire as the only way to free the hostages. We repeat our opposition to settlements in the West Bank. And we repeat our demand to massively scale up humanitarian assistance into Gaza. The recent announcement that Israel will allow a basic quantity of food into Gaza, a basic quantity, is totally and utterly inadequate. So we must coordinate our response, because this war has gone on for far too long. We cannot allow the people of Gaza to starve, and the Foreign Secretary will come to the House shortly to set out our response in detail. Mr. Speaker, let me turn now to the 3 deals this government has struck. The principles we took into the negotiations are clear and simple. Does it drive down bills? Does it drive up jobs? Does it strengthen our borders? And in each case, the answer is resoundingly yes. These deals release us from the tired arguments of the past and, as an independent sovereign nation, allow us to seize the opportunities of the future. A clear message sent across the globe that Britain is back on the world stage. Mr. Speaker, a trade deal with the world's fastest growing economy, India, cutting tariffs for British industries, a huge boost for our whisky and gin distilleries. Their only concern now, Mr. Speaker, is whether they can produce enough to sell. And for our car manufacturers, tariffs slashed from over 100% to just 10%, with no concessions on visas. A trade deal with the world's richest economy, the United States, slashing tariffs, saving thousands upon thousands of jobs in car manufacturing in places like JLR, protecting our steel and aluminium exports and safeguarding interests of our hugely important pharmaceutical sector. But, Mr. Speaker, I can already see that when it comes to this hat-trick of deals, it's our new partnership with the EU that they most want to talk about. And, Mr. Speaker, and given their abject failure to strike a deal with India or the US, I can't say I blame them. So let me spell out the benefits of this deal, which gives our country an unprecedented level of access to the EU market. Mr. Speaker, the best access of any nation outside the EU or EFTA. I will start with our security, because when Russian tanks rolled into Ukraine over 3 years ago now, the gauntlet was thrown down, and it's our responsibility to step up. That is what this world demands, and it's what this partnership delivers, strengthening our national security through our new security and defence partnership. Mr. Speaker, that paves the way for British defence firms to access the EU's €150 billion defence fund. That will support British jobs, British wages, British livelihoods. The partnership also increases cooperation on emissions trading, saving UK businesses from having to pay up to £800 million of EU carbon taxes, once again backing British businesses. The deal will drive down bills with increased cooperation on energy, because the agreement negotiated by the party opposite left us with a more expensive way of working with our neighbours, a needless rupture despite our grids being connected by underseas cables. This partnership brings those systems together again, benefiting British bill payers and boosting clean British power in the North Sea. Mr. Speaker, it also strengthens our borders, because again the previous deal left a huge gap, weakened our ability to work together to tackle illegal migration. the ultimate cross-border challenge. This partnership closes that gap, including joint work on returns, preventing channel crossings and working upstream in key source and transit countries, cooperating along the whole migration route to strengthen our hand in the fight against the vile smuggling gangs. It boosts our cooperation on law enforcement, Mr. Speaker, combating terrorism and serious organised crime, with closer operational work with agencies like Europol and better sharing of intelligence and data, including, for the first time, facial imaging. Mr. Speaker, it helps British holidaymakers because they will be able to use e-gates when they travel to Europe, ending those huge queues to passport control. And it delivers for our young people because we're now on a path towards a controlled youth experience scheme with firm caps on numbers and visa controls. A relationship we have with so many countries around the world, some actually even set up by the party opposite. We should be proud to give our young people that opportunity. And, Mr. Speaker, not for the first time, this government has delivered for Britain's steel industry, protecting our steel exports from new EU tariffs, backing our steel sector to the hilt. But last but certainly not least, Mr. Speaker, we have a new SBS deal, as promised in our manifesto, that will cut the price of the weekly shop, more money in the pockets of working people, less red tape for our exporters, no more lorry drivers queuing for 16 hours at the border with rotting food in the back, no more needless checks, the inevitable consequence of their policies that made it so much harder to trade, even within our own market, between Great Britain and Northern Ireland. And, Mr. Speaker, that means that British goods that have long been off the menu in Europe can regain their true place, including shellfish, hugely important in Cornwall, Devon and Scotland. Because, Mr. Speaker, not only does our deal on fish provide stability, with no increase in the amount that EU vessels can catch in British waters, it also provides a new SBS agreement which slashes costs and red tape for our exports into the European market. We sell 70% of our seafood into that market. It is a huge opportunity, which our £360 million investment in British fisheries will now look to export. Mr. Speaker, the reaction to this deal from business has been absolutely clear. Mr. Speaker, I know you're a stickler for time. I don't have time to run through the list of supportive quotes from businesses. But this... Fine. All right. But this new partnership...
It was great.
Well, Mr. Speaker, this new partnership has been backed. This isn't the full list. The Federation of Small Businesses, the CBI, the British Retail Consortium, Asda, Morrison's, Salmon Scotland, the Food and Drink Foundation, the British Chamber of Commerce, Ryanair, Vodafone, producers of meat, foil and poultry, and on it goes. And I wonder whether that long list of businesses coming out to support this deal will temper the reaction of the Leader of the Opposition in her response. But then again, for weeks now, she's been dismissive of the benefits of any trade deal, in defiance, frankly, of her party's history. But it's not just them, it's also the member for Clapton, who's not here, the member for Kingston, who've both shown in their own ways that their parties simply do not get that if your whole approach to our allies is about striking a pose, then you don't get to strike a deal. And, Mr. Speaker, what that means in a world like ours, where deals are ever more the currency of security and justice, is that you don't get to make a difference and you don't get to deliver for Britain. That is what this partnership means. And for years we were told it couldn't be done. What they meant was they couldn't do it. We were told that a deal with the US or India was impossible. What they meant was impossible for them. We were told that a choice must be made between the US and the EU. What they meant was they couldn't do a deal with both. Mr. Speaker, this government can and this government will, because we stay in the room, we fight for the national interest and we put the British people first. That is what these deals represent, a signal that we're back on the world stage, a global champion of free trade, playing our historic role on European security. But above all, making deals that put money in the pockets of working people. Because, Mr. Speaker, that is what independent sovereign nations do, and I commend this statement to the House.
Leader of the Opposition, Kemi Badenoch.
Mr. Speaker, when Labour negotiates, Britain loses. He talks about a hat trick of deals. They are own goals. In 2020, the Conservatives concluded the Trade and Cooperation Agreement, the largest and most comprehensive free trade agreement in the world. We agreed to come back in 5 years to improve terms. This renegotiation should have been an opportunity to improve terms for our country. The terms are improved for the EU. And the Prime Minister can dress it up as much as he wants, but he has failed. It is bad for bills, it is bad for jobs, and it is bad for borders. This is not a deal made for Britain. This is a deal made for Labour's PR, to show them on the world stage. But it is a stitch-up for our country for their short-term headlines. Let's take the Prime Minister's abject failures one by one. First, on fishing. He has given away the prize most desired by EU member states and done so for almost nothing. Mr. Speaker, it is very easy to sign deals if you're prepared to give everything away for pennies. This deal locks out our fishermen until 2038. We are now in a worse position than the Faroe Islands, a set of islands with a population of Scarborough, but who get to have annual negotiations. And the Prime Minister quoted some organisations welcoming his deal. He doesn't listen to them normally, but he left one out deliberately. The National Federation of Fishermen's Organisations, who have described the deal as a surrender and a giveaway. This is a Prime Minister who would pay to give away his family silver. Why is the Prime Minister selling our fishermen down the river? Is it because they don't vote Labour? Second, on food and agriculture, the Prime Minister is going to pay the EU, Mr. Speaker, he's going to pay the EU to abide by laws that we have no say on. While British farmers struggle with the family farms tax his Chancellor has imposed on them, their regulations will now be made in Paris and enforced in Brussels. It is a total capitulation. We're not in the EU. We are not at the table. So can the Prime Minister tell us how is he going to ensure accountability for the hundreds of regulations he has signed this country up to? Third, on energy, the Prime Minister has shackled us to the EU's emissions trading scheme. This means the government can no longer cut energy costs without the EU's permission. It will also unravel parts of the India FTA he's just negotiated. This isn't a technicality, it is a betrayal. The House should be in no doubt. This means higher bills, more pain and less flexibility. Fourth, on his own manifesto promises, the Prime Minister said that we would not rejoin the single market. He promised no new payments, that he would protect British interests. That promise has lasted about as long as his commitment to protect pensioners' winter fuel allowance. He said whatever was needed to win power, Mr. Speaker, and now he'll say whatever is needed to keep it, even if it means selling out our sovereignty, our businesses and the public. The truth is that most of what was announced yesterday was not a deal. There was no binding agreement on anything. Most of the items outlined are simply agreements to enter into further discussions we are already having. The Prime Minister is boasting that we will now avoid airport queues because we'll get access to EU e-gates. It sounds great, except it isn't true. Some airports already allow it. This deal does not guarantee it anywhere. Each country still has to agree. And that, Mr. Speaker, sums up this deal perfectly. It is a lot of spin to disguise the terrible substance. Having previously ruled out a youth mobility scheme, the Prime Minister is now desperately trying to hide his latest U-turn by rebranding it as an experience. This is risible. We have no details on any cap, no details on any time limit, which begs the question, Why is the government talking about increasing migration before it has got a grip on the small boats or the legal migration system? I know the Prime Minister doesn't like answering questions, but people out there want to know, can we have some honesty as to what has been discussed? How many young European workers does the Prime Minister think would be acceptable? And will they be able to bring dependents? Even the defence commitments in this deal are hopelessly one-sided. We're making payments, but they are offering dialogue and consultation. This is a pitiful return for the country that leads NATO in Europe with troops on the ground in Estonia defending our allies. Can the Prime Minister tell us why there's not a single word in his statement about the money we will now be sending to Brussels? And can he set out how much those payments will cost taxpayers? Mr. Speaker, in government, details matter, and so does honesty. They're laughing, but this is a bad deal for the country. Look at them. This is how they laughed at the budget. They have no idea what it is they've signed up to. He said he would stay out of the single market. He's going into the single market for agri-food, electricity and energy. He said he'd stay out of the customs union, but he is accepting EU tariff rules. How does he plan to stop the EU changing them to our disadvantage? He has no idea, neither do any of them. Because the British people know, Mr. Speaker, when they are being misled. They know that headlines fail. He didn't listen to the CBI on the jobs tax. He didn't listen to the FSB on the family farms tax. This deal has already unravelled. The damage is becoming clear. The political consequences will be huge. And here he is, trumpeting his success. And when he stands up in a moment, he'll deflect, he'll dismiss, he'll distract. But we all know the truth. This was a fiction of a speech, a fraud of a deal, a failure of a Prime Minister.
Oh dear. That was just such an unserious response. She says detailed matter in government. They matter in opposition as well. The SPS agreement cuts red tape and bureaucracy for all food and agriculture going into the EU. That's a massive boost for our supermarkets, for our farmers and others. Why is it that all the supermarkets have come out behind this? Because they know how important the SPS agreement is. It's completely in our favour. Huge amount of detail there. The best agreement. On defence and security. Defence and security. Greater operational coordination. And she's against it at a time like that. It opens the gate the EU Defence Procurement Fund of €150 billion. That was a condition of it. It saves, Mr. Speaker, she complains about emissions. I'll tell you how much. Businesses were going to pay £800 million a year in tariffs that they won't now pay. That's why they're coming out in support of it. That's how much. The detail matters. The detail matters. Energy, we're already connected. We're not using that energy connection. Electrical access to the market. On steel, getting rid of the tariffs that will support British steel. And she's against it yet again. E-gates. And she says they're already in existence. This clears the way for e-gates everywhere. That's the huge difference. And if any of them doubt that, they should travel through a border today and see the long queues. And law enforcement, better operational working with Europol, and she's against it. Information sharing on facial mapping, dealing with criminal records, and she's against it.
Against everything.
She's absolutely unserious. She's also against the India deal, which of course does huge things for trades like whisky, where their only concern is whether they can produce enough. They've been absolutely clear about supporting the India deal, a deal they tried to do, and she now says she's against it. The US deal, which saved thousands upon thousands of jobs in car manufacturing, and JLR. I don't know whether she had the chance to do that trip to JLR, but she really ought to before she responds like that again. The US deal that reduces tariffs on steel so our steel can be sold into America, and she's against it and supports our whisky and gin. Mr. Speaker, she is against every single deal. She's the only ex-Trade Secretary who is against every single deal. This deal has been welcomed broadly because they're good deals. Now let me turn Oh, Mr. Speaker, you don't get a great long list of endorsements from all of the business associations, all of the companies. It's just they're so unserious that they're lost. They're lost into a descent in the abyss. They used to be a proud party of trading agreements. They have slid off into the abyss. That's where they are. And Mr. Speaker, on fishing, none of the rights negotiated by the party opposite have been removed. None of the rights. No change to access to coastal communities, the same as before. No reduction in the British quota or increase in EU quota, same as before. Reciprocal arrangements, same as before. What is new, Mr. Speaker, is the SPS agreement for the first time and permanent. They were unable to do this. That reopens the EU market for shellfish and makes it much easier to sell British fish into our largest trading partner. And, Mr. Speaker, that's hugely significant because 72% of British fish is traded into EU markets. It's now easier to do that. And we're backing that with £360 million for our fishing and coastal grants. Mr. Speaker, she talks about the youth experience scheme. It is a capped scheme. It is time limited. It is capped. It's time limited. It is balanced. Mr. Speaker, on relation to standards, the truth is this: we are currently aligned in our standards. We just don't get the benefit of it. We want to continue to have high standards, and that's what the British public want, and that's what this deal delivers. We will have a role in shaping any future rules, and application of them is specifically subject to our constitutional arrangements. We will have a process in this Parliament to apply the rules. But let's be clear, we are already applying those rules at the moment. We're just not getting the advantage. This strips that away. It's good for our country, good for our economy. And it's a shame that she can't stand up and support it.